It gives me great pleasure to join everyone for the launch of the Hong Kong Alumni of the Lee Kuan Yew School. I think the timing can't be better. In the Lee Kuan Yew School, we learned that public administration is not just simple administration. It always takes place under political leadership, within a political context, and in accord with a political tradition. Hong Kong has gone through a major transition in recent months with the introduction of the national security law and the reform of many key institutions in the country. In a sense, it will take time for this new political culture to evolve. Singapore was independent since 1965, so it's been many years since we had to govern ourselves. When Deng Xiaoping conceptualized one country, two systems, the objective was 港人治港, Hong Kong people governing themselves. And it rested on one fundamental precondition, which is 爱国爱港. That unless you love China and Hong Kong people cannot govern themselves. For many years, the cardinal principle was forgotten, partly because of vested interests in Hong Kong, in China, and there were Western powers who were quite keen for Hong Kong to remain what it was. The result was a political culture which did not evolve for Hong Kong people governing themselves. When the British were in Hong Kong, civil servants in Hong Kong took their orders from London. They didn't question those orders, they implemented those orders. And it was an efficient administration. After 1997, China took over. Beijing did not play the role which London did. It left Hong Kong to govern itself. It could not. Partly because Leshko was in permanent opposition. And it was very difficult for the Hong Kong government to implement policies. Every step was like walking through quicksand, thick mud. Well, matters reached a head. I mean, there were a series of events which culminated in the mayhem which took place, and Beijing finally decided he had to step in. So now there's a new beginning in Hong Kong. And while there are a lot of fears about what it means for Hong Kong society, many people are demoralized, young people are sullen. Many Hong Kongers have decided to emigrate. There is, however, one very positive outcome, which is that 2047 will no longer have a question mark hanging over it. You buy a house, you make a contract, you worry, what happens after 2047? Now, with national security no longer be an issue to the mainland, we can be assured that there will be continuity. And with that, I think Hong Kong's future is exciting. Singapore's involvement is, as Danny said, is because the two cities are identical, are similar in so many areas. Southern Chinese at its core. There's rivalry, of course, and we like to exaggerate those rivalries. But the overall relationship is a complementary one, and it has its roots. When the British East India Company established first Penang, and then Singapore, and then Hong Kong, before finally arriving in Shanghai. We were part of one larger economic system. And the Belt and Road, the new Belt and Road, is a replay of the old China trade of the 19th century, only on a much larger scale. The second last governor of Hong Kong, Sir David Wilson, he used to say to me, he says, you know, the rivalry is oversold. The relationship between Hong Kong and Singapore is like that between Oxford and Cambridge. The rivalries are played up for effect, for entertainment. But there's a profound relationship between the two, and each looks to the other for inspiration. You know, Lee Kuan Yew made it a point to visit Hong Kong every year. And I noticed that he found excuses to visit Hong Kong. He might be going to China, he might be somewhere else. And he would tell the foreign ministry, I want to stop in Hong Kong. When he was in Hong Kong, he would ask Run Shaw or Li Ka-shing or Robert Kuan, and in more recent years, Robert Ng, to host dinners for him, to meet old friends. And he observed carefully Hong Kong. And he found in Hong Kong inspiration for Singapore. I would say the learning was more one way than the other. Hong Kong did not look much to Singapore until after handover, when it then became Beijing policy that Hong Kong should learn from Singapore. So I noticed a change of attitude on part of the Hong Kong administration. When Singapore's MRT was being designed, Hong Kong's NPR was an inspiration to us. And we studied in detail. We studied some of its good points. We made a fateful decision in not following one aspect, which was the role of Hong Kong MTR to develop real estate around the stations. Singapore chose to go the other way, as a result of which we encountered many problems because the revenue base for the MRT in Singapore was not sufficient. And it started going after small monies and neglected engineering. When I was Minister for Information and the Arts and we were designing the Esplanade, I did a very careful study of Hong Kong's art center in Kowloon. And again, picked up good points and not so good points and learned from them. For example, I was surprised that even though it was by Victoria Harbour, you had no sense when you were in the Hong Kong Art Center of the water. So we said, no, Singapore's Esplanade must have a sense of the bay. Anson Chan, when David Wilson came up with Chet Lap Kok, said, we want to study Changi Airport. I said, we welcome it. Let us know what you want to know. We will make the arrangements. This constant toing and froing enriches both cities. And with Hong Kong embarking on a new political culture of 港人治港, of 爱国爱港, I think the Lee Kuan Yew School will play an important role. And the Alumni chapter will be an important thread linking the Lee Kuan Yew School to Hong Kong. You take, for example, a crying need in Hong Kong today for better housing, neglected too long because of the old political economy, which gave a vested interest in keeping property scarce and property prices high. This will no longer be the case in the future. China will not allow it, and the Hong Kong people should not allow it. And the new Hong Kong political establishment will not allow it. The Housing Authority in Hong Kong sees itself in a very limited role to provide public housing in the traditional sense. In Singapore, HDB is not just a provision of public housing. It is fundamental to nation building and the coherence, the cohesiveness of a community. There are many aspects to it. We've made mistakes. We've had some successes, and I'm quite sure the coming Hong Kong will be very interested in HDB's experiences and many other areas. And Singapore will in turn find many things to learn from Hong Kong. We are not competitors. As Danny said, we are far apart. I once made a check on the globe. The distance from Singapore to Hong Kong is the distance from London to Moscow. We have different hinterlands. Singapore is smack right in the middle of Southeast Asia, and with the Belt and Road, Hong Kong is becoming more and more interested in ASEAN, and we'll find Singapore very useful to use Singapore as a base to expand into ASEAN. Hong Kong is part of the Greater Bay Area, which more and more Singaporeans are taking an interest in. And Hong Kong will be a natural portal for Singapore to look into the Greater Bay Area. But Hong Kong is more than that. Hong Kong, in relationship to China, is outside the wall. What do I mean by that? China is homogeneous. Over 90% of the people are Han by design. And it protects itself by building great walls, not only physical walls, but walls for culture, for education, for the financial industry, for the capital markets, for entertainment. So even the number of Hollywood movies allowed in China is tightly regulated. And more recently, with COVID, the greatest war of all, the great biological war. The universe now is divided into the universe in China for COVID and the universe outside China for COVID. Hong Kong is part of China but outside the war. So Hong Kong is in a dilemma. Does it extend the biological wall around Hong Kong so that it can travel free into China? Or should it say, no, my role is outside China. It is better for me to harmonize with the world outside China and have special membranes connecting me to China. I think this is a debate which is ongoing, which Hong Kong is still grappling over. Hong Kong Airport wants to be open to the world. Cathay Pacific wants to be open to the world. But there are many people in Hong Kong who would prefer to be part of China. But I think in the end, because of Hong Kong's role in connecting China to the world, I think Hong Kong will in the end decide that it's more important to be connected to the world outside than to the world inside. Hong Kong's value to China is in its connection to the world outside. And that was the brilliance of Deng Xiaoping in conceptualizing equal 两制, one country, two systems. And if you look at it from this point of view, Hong Kong and Singapore can energize each other. We worry about Sino-US relations, which will get worse before they can get better. And it will be a protracted trial of strength for years to come, maybe 10, 20 years. I think psychologically, the mainland is prepared for 20, 30 years of struggle. And that's one reason why they have the dual circulation economy. Hong Kong has a great advantage in that it is part of both the internal circulation economy and part of the external circulation economy. Hong Kong can help Singapore also become a part of both the internal circulation economy and external circulation economy. And Hong Kong and Singapore can help Hong Kong in the external circulation economy, particularly when the political situation gets more intense. Because the US isn't happy about what's happening in Hong Kong. It sees its influence waning. It sees some of its own inroads in the past being blocked. But US financial interests cannot disregard Hong Kong. Now, China is telling its companies that, look, if you list in New York, there are more hurdles to jump over. But if you list in Hong Kong, that's fine. Which means that the financial industry, the American financial industry, will want to be part of Hong Kong. Well, let's see. It'll be complicated. But Singapore can play a role because Singapore, unlike Hong Kong, is not part of China. If there's a big fight between China and the US, Singapore will be neutral, hiding behind the ASEAN position of neutrality. And this will give Hong Kong more flexibility. And Hong Kong's deep relationship with China will also give Singapore more flexibility. So there's every reason to link both cities more closely, culturally, politically, business-wise. And I see in recent years more and more families straddling both. And the alumni chapter, the Hong Kong alumni chapter of Lee Kuan Yew School will add another bridge to this connection. Thank you.